at the end of this tutorial, we'll create a liquid we'll create this. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Hi guys, let's do a short liquid sim. Let's choose the default cube, click on object, and go down to quick effects, quick liquid. Make sure you got the default cube selected when you do that, or else it won't work. Quick liquid, there we go. Numpad 1, press S to scale this out, and then press S again to scale this out, but first type in Shift Z, and then it will only scale on the X and Y axis. Something like that should be cool. Then press G, lock it to the Z axis, bring it up above the red line, and your simulation will be off because you have to rebake it in for it to work. So don't worry about that right now. We're going to put the cube over here and the domain over here. Now the cube we have to rename quickly. We're going to call this the liquid flow. Two important things when it comes to water physics simulation is the flow and the domain. So we're going to call this, I guess we can call it liquid, and everything to do with our liquid physics we'll chuck in here. Liquid flow and liquid domain. First thing we want to do is go to our liquid domain and go to our physics properties and check domain liquid. Let's up this to at least 64, and let's up the detail to at least 8 and at least 4. Just a personal preference for a slightly better result, and it doesn't take up too much time changing that. Then we can scroll down, and we can also speed up the time scale. Let's make this 2 so it's faster. Let's scroll down, and you'll notice that the bake button is missing, and it's because we need to change replay to modular. And we also want to limit this to 120 frames because 250 is a bit long. Let's make it resumable, and I'm quite happy with that. Let's bake it in. Okay, right. So now when we press play, we can see it flows out quite nicely. However, the issue we have here with this flow is that it's just using the geometry of the cube and there's no more extra flow. So the way we fix that is we select this liquid flow cube, go to our physics properties, flow, liquid, and changes to inflow. And by changing to inflow, it's like a tap that always runs. And now we're going to use this over here. We're going to say at frame 20, we don't want to use the flow at frame 20. So in fact, let's make it at frame 40. We don't want to use the flow. And we're going to click on this to create a keyframe. We just keyed that in. However, if we press over here to 41, we want to click use flow and then tick this for keyframe. Then the tap goes on and it keeps running. And we'll bake that in a second. We can also increase the direction, velocity and direction of your flow. So for example, you can have your normal amount of directional velocity. I normally set this to at least 10, if not greater. So it pushes, and so it doesn't start from 0, it starts moving. And then I also times it. The source here is it's a multiplier of the velocity that you have. And I'm just going to make this 20 because why not? And now we can decide on the direction that we want. In fact, let's make this 10, but then we make our z-axis 30. Now, positive 30 is up, negative 30 is down. Y-axis, x-axis, positive is this way, negative is this way, and the y-axis is very similar, so it's all the same. So now we're just going to have the water shoot up. However, we want gravity to be more powerful. So we're just going to free everything we just did. We're going to scroll all the way down. We're going to go to field weights, and we're going to make gravity 10. Once we've done that, we can scroll up. You can also choose where you want this to bake, and I'm quite happy for now in this example to leave it as is. We're going to bake this in, and I'll see you after this bake. Alright, so it's rendered. So now when we press play, we'll notice that nothing happens until we hit frame 40. So we can time this up with an animation of someone turning a tap on, and then it shoots up, but the gravity forces it down immediately, creating this beautiful effect. Now, I just switched to frame 43. If we go to solid view mode, you can't see anything. So the way around that is we'll choose wireframe mode. We're going to go down here to the liquid domains physics settings, and we're going to click on mesh. We're going to turn mesh on. I'm going to expand this open, and you can choose the settings you want. Final is perfectly fine. Everything looks good here, and we can just bake this in. I'll see you after this bake. Alright, if your render is completed and it was successful, we can now go back to frame 1. We'll notice that nothing is visible until we hit frame 40. And all of a sudden your domain disappears and you just see this liquid. That looks really cool. And the best part is if we go to solid view mode, we can actually see our liquid here. And we can actually go back to frame 1. Now, there's one more thing you're probably wondering. How do you make sure that the domain is not there to begin with? Well, one thing you could do is you could say at frame 40, so we can go here, we type in frame 40, and we see this chunk here. What we could do is we could click over here, click on this render view, and click that, and then press I. You've just keyed that to make sure it doesn't render all the way up to frame 40. Then you press +1, and you turn this on, and you press I. Now it does. Now when you render this out, it won't show until frame 40, and then it will. One last thing we'll do before we render it, like we did in the beginning of this video, because that's the final result we'll have here, we can click on this liquid domain, and we can set a color. And we might decide to say this, we want this to look really realistic, so we might say we want it to be glass, Ben Beckman, or we might want to be a little bit more creative, where we say, listen here, actually I'd be happy if this was an emission, and we would want this emission to be at frame 40, yellow. We hover our mouse over here, and we press I, and then we switch to frame 80. We change the color, hover our mouse over here, and we press I, and then finally we go to 120, which is the final frame, changes to something random like red, and press I. And the only thing I would recommend you do also is just increase the strength to 5, and that should be enough to demonstrate this in real action. All we have to do is set up the camera now. So we select the camera, we hover to an interesting angle like this, far out, Control Alt Numpad 0, press G, bring it into place so you've got an angle for your view. Click on the lighting, and I'd probably change it to sun, maybe make it 5, and give it a, maybe a blue or a blue color. Something like that should be good. If we go to our render view, we'll have an idea of how this will look. So it'll look something like this. So the only thing I'd recommend is click on your domain, maybe change the strength. Let's see how 1 looks, how 2 looks. Oh, 1 sec. Yeah, I'm going to leave it on 2. And you could up this as well, like it starts off with 1, goes to 10, and goes back down, and they'll have this interesting glow effect, but we'll leave it as is. Only other thing you want to do is go to your render settings, turn on bloom, make that pop like that, and stuff I always tick is ambient occlusion, screen space reflections, and for this we might want to go to our render settings, our output over here, not our render settings, sorry. And you might want to change this to a video, which you could, but I'm going to leave it as PNG because that's perfectly fine, and reduce the compression to 0 so it's as quick as possible with all things considered. Once you're happy with this, all you need to do is go on render and click render animation. I almost forgot. The other thing you want to do before we render animation is make sure you click over here on this camera icon. By the way, you click over here to activate what you want to see. And we want to make sure that the liquid flow doesn't render. That is crucial. Once you've done that, we can click render, render animation, and it will start off with nothing, and out of nothing, at frame 40, when the switch frame 40, it will start. Oh yeah, and just a heads up, I did click on the world properties and change the background color to black. And on the render settings, the other thing I quickly did is I just made the end time 120 frames to match the animation time. And if we click now that it's rendered, if we click view animation, this is what we've got. Yeah, see, 40 frames, 24 frames per second, so about 2 seconds, nothing, and then it appears and it explodes. I hope you like this tutorial. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers.